collections are what makes museums museums. They're the core purpose of museums, really. Well, they should be your biggest asset, and they're potentially your biggest liability. You can't be accountable for something that you don't know what it is, or where it is, or where it came from, or what sort of state it's in, or who else might have rights to it, or there might have been conditions about how an object is used as part of the donation. Without that information, it's very difficult to be accountable.
Accountability for collections is an ethical responsibility for museums and organisations, in that museums hold objects in trust, serve them, provide access to them. So ethically, it's about making sure that accountability means that you know what you have and you are looking after it properly.
There also needs to be a way of sort of supporting transparency around what you're doing, so you can give access to the information about the collections that you hold. That's both internally to staff, so they can do their job better, they can answer inquiries more efficiently and more effectively, create better exhibitions, do more in-depth and more engagement activities, education activities. And it also enables you to access to be given to external researchers, and potentially sort of develop loans and raise the profile of your organisation.
Accountability for collections begins with your museum's policies, plans and procedures. So, for example, your collections development policy that outlines what new donations your museum is willing to accept, and that document is useful to be able to inform your decisions on whether you accept or decline new donations. So even before that, they might even turn up at the museum. So you're sort of like heading off things that you don't want to be responsible for before they even turn up. And it's useful for like making your front of house staff at the museum, if they're aware of your collections development policy, they can talk to potential donations and make them aware of what objects we do take and what we decline. Your documentation policy will explicitly state how you are going to actually be accountable for your collections, and it's a chance for you to explain exactly what information you're going to be recording about objects, where it's going to be stored and who's going to have access to it and for what purposes. And similarly, your documentation plan that should outline exactly how you will tackle collections issues you've got with your collections with objects already in your care. So, for example, if there's any documentation backlogs, or how you deal with objects that you find in your collection that doesn't have a number or any other identifying features as well.
I think the whole museum family is responsible for achieving accountability for collections. It really takes everybody, from the person who is on the front desk, who might take a donation from a member of the public, right through to the member of the governing body who signs off the documentation policy on behalf of the trustees.
Some will have more responsibility than others. So, for example, traditionally the collections or curatorial team will have responsibility for kind of understanding what's needed in the care and management of those collections. So they'll have a certain level of responsibility to kind of stay up to date with guidance and ethical frameworks and kind of things like spectrum, the kind of standards that need to be adhered to. But also, I think trustees, managers, senior management, kind of above that, they have responsibility for assuring that they are accountable. So they have a responsibility for understanding the importance of collections care and collections management work to an organisation. They have a responsibility, I think, to ensure that collections care and management work is at the heart of everything that organisation does. So its mission, its business planning, for example, activity planning.
And then there's the other sort of aspect as well about collections information and accountability, again on a sort of staff terms, is how do you know whether the collection is dangerous? I think we know more now than ever about some of the dangers within collections around poisons, radioactivity, carcinogenic substances within collections, or explosives. So often come against, or is it a fire risk? Is it a source of a pest that might infect either the people who work there or rest of your collections or your buildings.
So collections information really forms the foundation of accountability for collections, and certainly as part of the accreditation process, we do ask certain things of museums around how they manage information. We look at how they're progressing towards implementing the Spectrum primary procedures, as well as how they're caring for and managing the collections.
Good collections information as well it's also foundation building, in that having a good knowledge of what you have and where it is, that kind of tangible information, it then allows you to start to build on developing your understanding about the intangible information around collections. So by that I mean kind of the stories that those collections hold, what they mean to people. And I think it also allows you to identify where you might need to develop that. So whether this be research about the objects and the collection's origin, for example, or the use. And then you can use that foundational information to connect the objects and those collections to audiences and communities.
You can even record things those things that you turn down that are still in the community. Sometimes it isn't. It is that you really haven't got space or they're not the thing for you at the moment. Don't go collecting things until you've got the facilities to do that. But there's nothing stopping you just doing an Excel spreadsheet of what is out there in your community that relates to your collecting areas.
I'm very much a believer that people, audiences, anybody that engages with museum work, they need to see a bit of themselves reflected in that work and what they do. So even if you don't have that information, even if you know it's not accurate, but you are working towards kind of ensuring it's accurate, so with a kind of collections plan, for example, I think again it builds trust, fosters co-production, relationship building, and that can kind of lead on to other things in the future. Even acknowledging that, for example, the information that you hold misrepresents or excludes certain voices. I think as long as you're aware of that and you're acknowledging that, but you are working towards kind of writing that.
Accreditation is a really great tool to ensure organisational support for collections management activities in your museum. It's a national standard that can underpin your development, and it opens up the door to financial support, exciting loans, training, support through museum and development, and lots more.
It can be difficult to do this work, as I said, against wider project work or when capacity is reduced. But just building this in and making sure, I think a little bit often is so important, because with collections work, particularly documentation and collections care, a little often, it's like preventative. It prevents bigger problems down the line.
In terms of accreditation, just remember, when you are submitting an application or a return, we're not looking for perfection. We do understand that at that moment, it's a snapshot in time of your museum and where you are at. What we are looking for is evidence that you have thought about accountability, and we're looking for evidence in the form of policies, plans, procedures that are in place that will support the museum's work to achieve accountability for the collections going forward.
If you're unsure of that, the wider importance of it, then there's plenty of resources, look to that, speak to Collections Trust, speak to MDM, and also speak to colleagues as well and find out how they're doing it.
It's important to remember that we care for collections on behalf of the public, so we are ultimately accountable to them.